the spark of fury. Alex had always been a calm and collected man. A scientist by nature, he loved to study the unknown, to understand the mysteries of the universe. His life was filled with equations, experiments, and data points that had little to do with feelings or emotions. To him, emotions were merely distractions, things that could cloud one's ability to reason. That was until the day he made a discovery that would change everything. He was working late in his lab, as usual, surrounded by papers, monitors, and test tubes. The lab was quiet, the only sounds being the hum of machines and the soft clicking of his keyboard. But something was different that night. Alex had been researching deep into quantum physics, trying to understand the forces that held the universe together. His experiments had been pushing the boundaries of human knowledge, and for the most part, they were going well. But today was different. He'd discovered a strange anomaly in his data. It wasn't a regular error or glitch, but something more profound. Something that, at first, didn't make sense. The experiment he had been running was based on manipulating energy fields, nothing new, really. But this anomaly, this odd signal, seemed to react to something Alex hadn't expected, his own emotions. Curious, Alex decided to test it. At first, he simply focused on the task at hand, feeling a little frustration bubbling up as his experiment failed once again. And then, it happened. The energy field, the one he had been working on for weeks, suddenly pulsed brighter, stronger, and more chaotic. Alex's frustration seemed to feed it, making the energy grow more unstable. He stepped back, confused and startled by what he was seeing. Could it be that his emotions were having an effect on the experiment? He couldn't believe it. It didn't make sense. But as he stood there, watching the strange energy field flicker and grow, a thought crossed his mind. What if emotions could influence energy on a much larger scale? What if human feelings could affect the very fabric of the universe itself? The idea was insane, of course. But Alex wasn't one to back down from a challenge. He decided to explore further. He wasn't sure how or why, but he needed to know. His experiment wasn't just about data anymore. It was about something much bigger. Something that could change everything. He decided to take it further. This time, instead of simply observing the field, he focused entirely on his anger. It wasn't hard to summon that emotion. The frustration of endless failed experiments had built up over the past few months, and now it was ready to explode. He clenched his fists, gritted his teeth, and let the anger flood his mind. The field reacted immediately. It wasn't subtle. The room seemed to vibrate with the intensity of the energy now crackling in the air. The lights above him flickered. The machines hummed louder, as though trying to contain the chaos he had unleashed. Alex's heart raced as he realized the enormity of what he was doing. This wasn't just an experiment anymore. This was something far beyond his understanding. The energy field, now glowing with an eerie red hue, seemed to have a life of its own. It pulsed in time with Alex's heartbeat, growing stronger with each wave of anger that surged through him. The air felt thick, charged with a dangerous intensity. For a moment, Alex thought it might be a hallucination, or that his lab equipment was malfunctioning. But as he watched the swirling energy begin to tear at the fabric of the room, he knew this was real. It was real, and it was his fault. What have I done? Alex thought, panic beginning to creep into his mind. He tried to calm himself, to steady his breath, but the anger wouldn't subside. It had taken on a life of its own, far more powerful than anything he could control. The energy began to spread beyond his control, lashing out, warping the space around him. The lab once a place of discovery and logic, was now becoming a dangerous arena, a battlefield for emotions that had no place in the scientific world. Suddenly, the energy burst outward with a violent explosion of light, throwing Alex to the ground. The shockwave rattled the walls, the glass windows shattered, and everything around him was consumed by a blinding flash. He could hear the faint sounds of alarms in the distance, but they were drowned out by the deafening roar of the energy, field that had spiraled out of control. For a moment, everything was still. Alex lay on the cold floor, his heart pounding in his chest, his mind reeling. What had just happened? Was this the result of his anger? Was it really possible that human emotion could manifest as a physical force capable of distorting the universe itself? He rose to his feet shakily, his hands trembling as he reached for his equipment. The lab was in ruins, but it was still intact enough for him to see the raw data on his screens. His experiment had worked, but at what cost? The energy he had created wasn't just localized, was expanding slowly but surely. Alex didn't understand the full implications of what he had just unlocked. But one thing was clear: human anger had the power to destroy. The universe itself couldn't handle it, and if he didn't find a way to stop it, it might just tear everything apart. He stumbled back, overwhelmed by the reality of what he had unleashed. He had tapped into something far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined, and now there was no going back. The universe would never be the same again. The first spark of fury had been lit, and it was far from over. The chase begins. The devastation caused by Alex's experiment spread far beyond the walls of his lab. For the first time, human anger had been transformed into a force that could ripple through space itself, defying all natural laws. But Alex, in his panic and confusion, had no idea that this small spark of fury would set off a chain of events that could change the fate of the entire universe. The energy that had exploded from his lab didn't just fade away. It spread, fast and unstoppable, reaching deep into the cosmos. Far from the destruction of his lab, the first signs of this unnatural force were detected by an ancient, technologically advanced Resthacorthians. The Corthians had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations throughout the galaxies. They had studied every form of power, harnessed every energy source, and understood the deepest secrets of the universe. But never had they encountered something like this. The Corthians, beings who had transcended all emotions, could only see emotions as weaknesses. To them, anger was an obsolete concept, something primitive, destructive, and beneath them. But as the energy from Alex's outburst began to reach their ships, their cities, and their advanced tech, they saw the destructive potential of human anger firsthand. It wasn't just a minor anomaly. It was a cataclysm waiting to happen. In the Corthian capital, a leader known as Vorus convened an emergency council. His eyes narrowed as the readings came in. He could feel the disturbance in the cosmic flow, and he understood the implications immediately. Human anger wasn't just dangerous. It was a force that could tear apart the fabric of space and time itself. "We must act before it consumes everything," Vorus said, his voice cold and steady. The Corthians were not known for their emotions, but there was an unmistakable urgency in his tone. They had seen many worlds die, but this was different. They would not let their universe be destroyed by an emotion they had long since eradicated from their own existence. A fleet of Corthian warships was swiftly assembled, their engines glowing with power. Their mission was clear: find the source of this energy Alex and neutralize it before it could spread further. Meanwhile, on the planet where Alex's lab once stood, Alex himself was beginning to understand the gravity of what he had done. In the aftermath of the explosion, the world around him was in ruins. But the strange energy still pulsed in the air, the remnants of his anger lingering like a toxic cloud. His heart raced as he watched the storm of energy spiral outward, its glow faint but undeniable. Why is it still growing? Alex muttered to himself, pacing in the shattered lab. He had tried everything he could think of: emotions, calculations, even attempts to reverse the process, but nothing seemed to stop it. The energy didn't respond to logic or reason. It had a life of its own, and it was only getting stronger. He stared at the monitor in front of him, which displayed his last readings. His hands shook as he typed in commands, trying to gather as much data as possible, but all he saw was more chaos. The energy was spreading faster than he could control it. It was as though it had a mind of its own. Was it possible that his anger, once triggered, was now feeding on its own power? Could it be growing because it was drawing energy from the universe itself? In that moment, the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Alex wasn't alone anymore. The faint hum of engines filled the air as he turned toward the horizon. His eyes widened in disbelief. He had never seen ships like the ones now approaching. They were sleek, dark, and unlike anything from Earth. Their technology was beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. Before he could react, the ships landed in a precise formation, their doors opening with an eerie silence. Out stepped beings taller than Alex, their bodies covered in shimmering armor that reflected the light of the distant stars. Their eyes were cold and distant, devoid of any warmth or compassion. They were the Corthians. Alex knew instantly that he was in trouble. These beings weren't here for a friendly chat. They were here for one thing only: to stop the chaos he had set in motion. And from the look on their faces, they had no intention of negotiating. "Human," Vorus said, stepping forward. His voice was deep, echoing in the empty space around. "Them, you have unleashed a power you cannot control. You will come with us, or we will destroy the source of this energy." Alex backed away, his heart pounding in his chest. He had heard stories about powerful alien civilizations, but nothing could have prepared him for this. "You don't understand," he said, his voice shaking. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was an accident, I swear." But Vorus was unmoved. "There are no accidents in the cosmos. You have created a weapon more powerful than anything we've ever encountered. It must be stopped before it tears apart everything." The Corthians raised their weapons, energy crackling from the tips. They were prepared to annihilate him, to end the threat before it spread any further. Alex's mind raced. Was he really going to die here? Or was there a way to stop the Corthians and the chaos he had created? He knew one thing for sure: there was no going back. The storm of anger he had unleashed was only the beginning, and unless he found a way to harness it or control it, the universe would soon know the full power of human rage, and it might just be more than the cosmos could handle. As the Corthians advanced, Alex made a choice. He turned and ran, knowing that his only hope lay in discovering the true nature of this power before it consumed him, and before the Corthians could stop him forever. The rising storm. Alex ran, his mind a whirl of fear and confusion. The Corthians were right behind him, their weapons charged and their footsteps heavy as they pursued him across the barren landscape. But it wasn't just the Corthians he was running from. It was the storm he had unleashed, the storm of anger, energy, and destruction that had already begun to rip through the fabric of the universe itself. The pulse of energy from his failed Experiment continued to expand, creating shockwaves that distorted reality wherever they touched. Alex had no idea how far it had spread, or how much damage it had already caused. He couldn't think about that now. All that mattered was Survivorland, finding a way to control the power he had set loose before it destroyed everything. His legs burned as he sprinted, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The Corthians were relentless. They moved faster than any human could, their technology allowing them to close the gap with terrifying speed. But Alex had something they didn't: desperation. And for the first time in his life, he was willing to push himself beyond his limits, to embrace the power that was both his curse and his only chance of survival. He ducked behind a crumbling structure, his heart pounding as he tried to collect his thoughts. What was he supposed to do? How could he stop this? His hands trembled as he pulled up his datapad, reviewing the information he had gathered before the explosion. Nothing made sense. The energy was feeding off itself, growing exponentially with each burst of anger, each emotion he allowed to slip through his guard. But it wasn't just him, it was the universe reacting to his feelings. His only hope, he realized, was to find a way to isolate the energy, to contain it. He needed to find something ancient, something that could help him control the rage inside him before it consumed the entire galaxy. Alex's mind flashed to a fragment of ancient knowledge, a legend from a civilization long thought extinct. It spoke of an artifact known as the Eye of Ecrion, a device said to have the power to regulate and contain the most volatile of emotions. It was an object of immense power, guarded by beings whose abilities rivaled the gods themselves. If it existed, it was the only chance Alex had. But where could he find it? The ancient texts were vague, full of riddles and half-forgotten details, and with the Corthians on his tail, he didn't have the luxury of time. The ground trembled beneath him, a sharp jolt that threw him off balance. He looked up to see the sky above him warping, the very air bending and twisting in response to the energy he had created. It was happening again. The storm was intensifying, the energy feeding off his fear and frustration. "I have to get to the Eye," he muttered to himself. "It's my only hope." With renewed determination, he pushed himself to his feet and sprinted toward the only clue he had, an ancient temple hidden deep within the heart of the planet. The legend spoke of it being a place of great power, and Alex hoped that it was more than just a myth. As he made his way through the desolate landscape, the Corthians drew closer. Their ships hovered overhead, scanning the area, their sensors picking up every movement. But Alex was no longer running simply from them. He was running toward something that could change everything. Meanwhile, aboard one of the Corthian warships, Vorus stood in front of the command table, his eyes narrowed as he surveyed the readings. The storm of energy Alex had unleashed was spreading faster than they had anticipated. It wasn't just a ripple through space. It was a tear in the fabric of reality itself. "We cannot allow him to reach the Eye," Vorus said, his voice cold and calculated. "If he does, the universe, as we know it, will cease to exist. We will lose control over everything." His officers nodded in agreement, their expressions grim. The Corthians had encountered many threats before, but never anything like this. Alex wasn't just a human with extraordinary anger. He was a living weapon, a force that could destroy the very foundation of their existence. Vorus tapped his fingers against the table, his mind working quickly. The Eye of Ecrion was an artifact of legend, but even the Corthians had heard whispers of its power. It had been hidden for centuries, sealed away by the ancient beings who had created it. But now, Alex was drawing closer to it. And if he found it, all hope for stopping the storm would be lost. "We must intercept him," Voras said decisively. "Prepare the fleet. We will not allow this human to gain control of that artifact." As Alex reached the outskirts of the ancient temple, the atmosphere around him seemed to shift. The air grew thick, almost as if the very planet itself was aware of his presence. The temple, an imposing structure of stone and metal, loomed before him like a forgotten relic from a bygone age. He stepped inside cautiously, his senses alert. The inside of the temple was dark, its walls lined with strange symbols and carvings that seemed to pulse with an energy all their own. The further Alex ventured into the depths, the more he felt the storm intensifying around him. His anger, his fear, his desperation, they were all feeding the chaos. The energy was responding to him, growing with each passing moment. He could feel it now. Deep within the temple, the eye of Ikrion. It was there, hidden in the heart of the structure, waiting for someone to unlock its power. But what if it didn't work? What if the artifact was just another myth, another false hope? As he reached the central chamber, Alex's breath caught in his throat. There, in the center of the room, stood a pedestal, and upon it rested the eye. It was a shimmering crystal, glowing faintly with an inner light, its surface covered in intricate runes that seemed to shift and change as he gazed at them. Alex stepped forward, his hands shaking as he reached out to touch it. The moment his fingers made contact, a surge of energy coursed through him, the storm outside intensifying in response. But this time, it wasn't destructive. It was calming. The eye seemed to absorb his anger, pulling the chaotic energy into itself. For the first time since the experiment, Alex felt a sense of control, but as the eye began to glow brighter, he realized something: he wasn't the only one who had been drawn to it. The Corthians were closing in. Alex had found the eye, but the question was, would it be enough to stop the storm and the Corthians before it was too late? The final stand, the eye of Ikrion, pulsed in Alex's hand, its glow intensifying with each passing second. He could feel its power coursing through his veins, resonating with the storm of energy he had unleashed. For the first time since the experiment, he felt a semblance of control. The anger, the fear, the chaos, everything was beginning to settle, drawn into the artifact like water into a drain. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Behind him, the Corthians closed in, their warships silently hovering above the temple, casting long shadows across the ancient stone. Voras led his troops, his eyes locked on Alex as he advanced toward the central chamber. The Corthians knew what Alex had found, and they knew that the eye, if misused, could destroy everything they had fought to protect. Human Voras called out, his voice booming through the temple's vast halls. "Do not think you can control that power. It will consume you, as it has consumed all who tried before you." Alex turned slowly, his hand still gripping the eye. He felt the weight of his choice pressing down on him. He could feel the Corthians' presence growing stronger, their energy pulsating like an ominous storm of their own. But Alex wasn't afraid anymore. He had come too far. He had no choice but to trust the eye, to trust that it held the key to saving the universe or condemning it. "I'm not going to let it destroy everything," Alex said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his insides. "I won't let my anger take over. I've learned my lesson, but I will stop you." Voras smirked, an expression of cold amusement crossing his face. You truly believe you can wield the eye. You are nothing but a fleeting human, and the eye will not bend to your will. It is a force beyond you. As Vorus spoke, his soldiers moved in, surrounding Alex with military precision. They were relentless, their advanced weaponry primed for action, but Alex wasn't backing down. He could feel the power of the eye within him, and for the first time he understood its purpose. It wasn't just a tool of control, it was a balance. It was the antidote to the chaos he had unleashed. He raised the eye, and in that moment, the energy surrounding them seemed to pulse in response. The room flickered with light as the artifact hummed, its inner glow shifting from a soft white to an intense blue, illuminating the entire temple. It was as if the very walls of the building were reacting to it, the ancient stone vibrating with power. Alex focused, drawing on the anger, the fear, and the desperation he had felt in the days leading up to this moment. But instead of letting it spiral out of control, he channeled it. He focused on the eye and poured his emotions into it, willing it to balance the storm outside. He imagined the power he had released, the energy tearing through space, and how he could stop it, not by destroying it, but by containing it, controlling it. The Corthians watched in stunned silence as the eye began to glow brighter, its power rising. But they weren't just watching Alex, they were watching the storm itself. The very fabric of reality was beginning to warp around them, distorting the space between them and the artifact. It was as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting to see who would win, the power of human anger, or the might of the Corthians. Vorus stepped forward, his voice sharp with authority. You cannot control it. You cannot contain it. It will consume you as it has consumed so many before. Alex's grip tightened around the eye. I won't let it. Not again. The storm outside raged harder. The ground beneath their feet trembled as if the planet itself was buckling under the weight of the energy Alex had released. The sky above was a swirling vortex, crackling with energy. It was no longer just the power of Alex's anger, it was a force of the universe itself, bent on destruction. But the eye responded. As Alex focused, the storm outside began to slow. The energy that had been surging uncontrollably through space started to pull back, like a wave retreating from a shore. The eye began to absorb it, taking the raw, chaotic energy and transforming it into something else, something controlled. The storm turned from a violent force into a gentle, almost soothing hum. Alex exhaled slowly, his muscles trembling as the energy began to settle. The eye was working. He could feel the storm's grip loosening, the universe slowly beginning to heal. The Corthians were still watching, but now they were silent, uncertain. Vorus's expression was unreadable. He had not expected this. He had not anticipated that the eye would work with Alex, the human. He had not expected this mortal to be capable of controlling the very force that had threatened to unravel everything they had built. But Alex knew that he wasn't finished yet. He had controlled the storm, but there was still one more challenge to face. The Corthians were still there, and they were not going to let him leave easily. Vorus stepped forward again, his voice colder now than ever before. You may have stopped the storm, but the eye will never be yours. You are not its true keeper, human. We will take it from you. Alex's heart raced. He had only moments before the Corthians could strike. The eye was powerful, but not invincible. He had to act fast. With one last surge of willpower, Alex held the eye high above him. The energy inside it swirled violently, gathering into a concentrated beam of light. He was no longer just controlling the energy, he was directing it. "Don't need to control it," Alex said, his voice steady and clear. "I just need to protect it." The beam of light shot forward, blasting the Corthians back. The force was enough to send their soldiers sprawling, their weapons disabled by the sheer energy of the eye. The storm, now fully contained within the artifact, grew quiet. The energy that had once threatened to destroy the universe now pulsed. In perfect harmony, the Corthians stood, disoriented but unharmed. As Alex lowered the eye, he knew the battle wasn't over. He hadn't won yet. But for the first time, he truly understood the power of human emotion. The rage, the anger, the fear it had almost destroyed everything. But it had also given him the strength to save it. As the Corthians regrouped, Alex turned toward the horizon. The storm was over, but the future was still uncertain, and he was the only one who knew the true cost of human anger. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was the keeper of something far more dangerous and far more powerful than anyone could have imagined. The universe had been changed, and so had Alex.